Good morning, everybody. Republican candidate for Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Will Martin is our very special guest today on a special Superman Saturday show, July 23rd, 2022. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and of course you're watching DrydenWire's Meet the Candidate, where each week we chat with a candidate running for a political or an elected office. Next week, we will welcome back to the show Republican candidate for Wisconsin Governor Rebecca Kleefisch. And the following week, the last week before the primary election, we will be chatting with candidate for Wisconsin's 73rd Assembly District, Angie Sapek. You know what? I'll have to confirm how you say the last name. But today we're chatting with Will Martin. Will is a candidate seeking the Republican nomination for Lieutenant Governor, in addition to being a small business owner for 20 years and advising government and private sector agencies in Great Britain, the Netherlands, and Israel. It just still blows my mind. Martin has served in multiple senior leadership roles for both Governor Tommy Thompson and Governor Scott Walker. Will, my man, good morning.
That's a mouthful. Good morning.
Yeah, holy cow. That's still, so you were on a show, I don't know, a few months ago, and we were talking about that, and it still just blows my mind. The things that you have done in your career.
Experience, man. I remember once getting on a plane. It took me, 72 hours round trip. I went over to Israel, worked, came back home. And so, doing some of those projects, absolutely awesome. But people don't realize that we didn't just change, the reforms that we did in Wisconsin. They didn't just change Wisconsin. They changed the country and literally changed the world. Places like Great Britain, Israel, Netherlands, as you mentioned, they literally put in place what was called Wisconsin Plan to actually reform their welfare.
And we did talk about that on our last show, but if you can kind of just quickly recap what that was.
Yeah. So Tommy Thompson envisioned ending welfare as we knew it. And, part of this was a result of the Democrats saying, hey, we're dissatisfied with life, particularly in Central City, Milwaukee at the time, creating more opportunity for folks. And so out of that conversation, because Tommy Thompson, had the good sense to, reach across the aisle and talk to more people, he actually ended up creating a new welfare system that was more welfare to work. So out of that, I actually quit my job at the state government. I was working as deputy director for him in his office. Quit that job, actually then led the privatized welfare to work reforms. So we didn't just change how it operated for families, we also changed how it was managed. So we actually privatized that. I led that effort, $250 million worth of that reform. We cut the caseload in half in 2 years, saved tens of millions of dollars for Wisconsin taxpayers. But the most important thing that we got out of that was helping people to re-enter the workforce, to have the dignity of their own work, of their own paycheck, and for kids and their families to now see them going to work and having a job and progressing. So that was a huge reform. And the world came here. Literally, we would have people from around the world come to Wisconsin to see this reform. The national law, our federal Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act was based on Wisconsin law. And so based on that, then I went and I helped set up the first welfare to work reform in Israel. That was called the Wisconsin Plan. I've actually still got the Israeli newspaper in Hebrew announcing the plan.
What?
And then I went to 30 or 40 cities in the Netherlands, as well as multiple times to work with the national government there to do training, to help cities and the national government set up new projects around these reforms. And then did a master class in Great Britain during the Blair administration, which was forever ago.
Yeah, you are an impressive man.
I'm old.
You're what?
I'm just old.
Well, all right, fine. I'll stick with my version. You stick with your version. That's fine. So it's nice to see you again. Of course. Actually, I just saw you. What was that? Only a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
You were a Spooner Spooner Parade, Spooner Rodeo.
Parade.
That is right. And it was in the evening sometime, and you had a couple people that you were kind of driving around with, and one of them had texted and said, "Hey, listen, Will Martin's here. Do you want us to stop by the house?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure." And it was supposed to be like a 5-minute thing, not for a story, not for DrydenWire at all. It was just, hey, good to see you again. I've, met you a few times. So you came here, you got to see the chat with the wife and the kids.
Uh-huh.
And then we were, I was walking you guys out and went in the garage, and 2.5 hours later, we're still talking out in the garage about just random things, life, faith, politics, families. I mean, just everything. And it was still the most enjoyable night I have had all year by far. So that was absolutely wonderful. My kids were obviously wildly impressed with you. They can't vote, so, but still.
I just got to tell you, it was absolutely amazing, and your kids are incredible. As I wrote you, the fact that your kids are so welcoming. So many teenagers are like, "Oh my goodness, let me get away from old people. Why are there people in my space?"
Right.
The kids were welcoming. We talked about taking pictures, and they were just ready to do it. And Jerusha's always a joy to see. So it was really fun. But I got a chance to come over because I now travel with county supervisors, So
Fancy.
The entourage that I have, John Righeimer, who's county supervisor in Sawyer County.
Great dude.
And Brian Melton, who's a county supervisor in Washburn. And so, some exciting folks to travel with.
So let's get to that. Let's get to your campaign. We have, 2.5, I should have probably looked up, 2.5 weeks, 17, 18 days left until the primary election. You seem to be picking up a lot of momentum. I would say probably since the GOP convention. I would say, I think right after that is when it really started to see some momentum picked up there, and I want to circle back to that in a second, but actually, let's just start right there. Why do you think, first of all, do you agree that it was around that time the momentum started picking up, and what was the reason for that?
Because for the first time, the delegates got a chance to see me. The real difference was, we were going and doing it very much retail, one-on-one, small group for a long time. And then for the first time ever, having the party, all 72 counties represented to get a chance to hear me, that was a very different experience. And so going to that convention, getting a chance to talk to that many people, and then showing them, not just telling them. So we actually put on our ads. So instead of doing a bio about myself, I actually talked about them, one, thanking them for the fact that there is no Republican Party of Wisconsin. It's really all of us who are making a difference, right? And so the fact that we took candidate Tommy Thompson and candidate Scott Walker, they're the reason why they became governors, Tommy Thompson and Governor Scott Walker.
Everyone that I have talked to, and by that I should say, I started DrydenWire in 2015. So I've been through a few election cycles, but not that many. But everything from city council races to board supervisors to sheriffs, assembly, state races. Not a lot of them, but enough.
Yeah.
Where you're almost like a unicorn in this sense, or this, it's really bizarre to me that everyone that I talk to that is following the lieutenant governors, specifically the Republican lieutenant governor's race, that I ask, kind of, who's your guy? Every single one says Will Martin. I've even had a few say that they've endorsed another candidate until they got to know you, and now they can't actually endorse you, but they're voting for you. It's really bizarre to me, because even my Democrat friends or my Republican friends, it doesn't matter if they don't know you. Like, again, my Democrat friends they won't say, there's nothing negative to say about you. Is it because we all seem to clamor for, or all seem to complain about and say, I just hate the politics part of it and the campaigns and the negative or this. How about we just have someone talking about policy, which is what you do? So is that the reason why? It's not a controversial thing. I have a plan. Let's focus on policy. Is that the reason why you're so well received and liked?
It's a reflection of the experience. So, I've been blessed, as we talked about, having my own business for 20 years. So you got to work on making payroll. You got to make sure you're paying your taxes, right? So there's no excuse about why that does or does not happen. Um, you think about having the experience of working for the longest serving governor in the history of the state, and actually having done the welfare to work reforms, the most ambitious reform in the United States at the time, and then working for Scott Walker and putting in place 120 opportunity zones that President Trump created that legislation. So much has given me experience, and so what I end up talking about is solutions, like Thompson, like Scott Walker, talking about solutions to real problems that people are having. So that's been the crux of why I think people have gotten on board. We are just talking about the convention, and getting up and, instead of talking about me, talking about dismantling DPI so that schools can actually once again teach. So teachers actually have some freedom rather than having the bureaucrats on the top of their heads constantly. The idea that we've got empty buildings, and so we showed the commercial about
Yeah.
real world empty buildings that for 2 years have sat virtually empty, including in Madison, that this governor has not brought them back to work. It's pointing out real world things and coming up with the solution. So, we've talked about dismantle DPI, create a Department of Education that is much slimmer and reports directly to the governor, so that we have more flexibility. The idea of selling off these properties so that we can actually retire debt, put back on the tax roll, and actually give people their money back. I've talked about the fact that we have multiple agencies. There are 5 agencies in state government that do economic development. We don't need 5 agencies doing economic development. What we need is one accountable agency.
Sure.
And so, again, there's just so many places in this government where we need to reform. And as Scott Walker called me, a real reformer who knows state government. So I think the reason people are reacting is because I know my stuff, I know this budget, and I know how we've gotten things done in the past and how we can get them done in the future.
Can that win an election? We just talked
Well,
about policy, 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 not politics. It's what everybody
correct.
says that it's what we want. We got it right now. Will Martin. Can
Yeah.
that win an election though?
Well, we're going to see in 2.5 weeks, right? That's really where it comes down to is, if people believe in the message, and if we can get it out to enough people, this is the real opportunity to have an experienced team come in. Part of the reason I'm running for this, and people talk about Lieutenant Governor does not have a lot of independent powers, right? So let's just be realistic about how much can the Lieutenant Governor do alone. Not a lot. But what the lieutenant governor can do is be the chief advisor to the governor. In both cases, whether it's in our party, Rebecca Clayfish, who served for 8 years as lieutenant governor, or Tim Michaels, who is coming in as a businessman. I'm coming with a business background of 20 years, as well as being the only person running who served the last 2 Republican elected administrations. I want to be that chief advisor for the new administration to help them, because in the first 30 days, we have to finish getting a budget ready.
Yeah.
And that's our one opportunity for 2 years to cut the size of state government. And that's the way you cut taxes and give people more breathing room. But having that experience is a real factor for me.
A lot of people think that lieutenant governor is a stepping stone.
Mm.
They view that position as a stepping stone for governor. Do you have any interest in being the governor?
I do at some point in life, if that's what the people call on me to do, and the Lord leads that direction, that'll be. But for now, I am steady and firmly rooted. I have no need. I'm not going to knock the nominee for the governor down, trying to get to a microphone or camera. Sometimes when people are using things as stepping stone, they get a little aggressive about cameras. I'm much
You
more
think?
worried about that policy issue that we
Yeah.
talked about, making sure that we've got. I'm perfectly happy to let the governor, the nominee, be upfront. What I really care about is making sure that I'm backing the next Republican governor up so they can get done the conservative agenda. And I just want to be there to make sure that we can get it done as effectively efficiently and then communicate that out to as many people. So, like you said, I was just up in Sawyer and Washburn counties just recently. What I want to do is after 30 days of getting the budget ready, and then the budget message will come out in mid-February. We got to get the budget passed by the end of June in order to stay within the fiscal year. There's a lot to be done. And we can remake Wisconsin and make it so much more business friendly and so much more family friendly and senior friendly. For instance, I want that we eliminate taxation of retirement income. If we get these things done, Wisconsin is going to be able to weather so much better any recession that the federal government throws at us as a result of overspending.
If I was your campaign manager, I would be telling you, you're wasting your time in Northwest Wisconsin because you are the only candidate that I've seen. Because, first of all, everybody tries to go to every single county, largely because, let's face it, so you can say, I've been to every single corner of the state. I've been to every single county. That's just how it works when you're running for state office, or it should be. That's typically how it goes. But and everybody pretty much has, for the most part. Well, I mean, not everybody, but most of them have been. And when I say north of Wisconsin, I don't mean La Crosse or Eau Claire. I mean, this is north of Eau Claire, south of Superior. This is all real, man. Not a ton of votes, but we've always said, Madison, Milwaukee, nobody cares about us up here. Those cities might as well be in Kentucky, right? That's so far away from us, and we don't feel any love. Right. But you're the only candidate, no joke, the only candidate, at least in the lieutenant governor's race, that is consistently up here. It's not just a checkbox. Why do you still come to northwestern Wisconsin?
Because you pay the same taxes as every other Wisconsinite. This is a state of 54,000 square miles, and that is much bigger than Madison and Milwaukee. And so for me, I want to make sure, especially for regions of the state that have been ignored, I want to make absolutely sure that we overcompensate in communicating and showing up. 80% of success is showing up. I want to make sure that people know I'm not just coming up there. And this is the difference, again, when we talk about policy versus politics. The politics will work its way out, however it does. But I want to make sure that win or lose, I've done it the way I believe. And so growing up in rural America, I grew up in Tennessee. I grew up poor. I came to Wisconsin for an education, and I got that education. It was great. I got a chance to be the first person in my family ever to graduate from college. I'm the first person in my family, as an entrepreneur. And I'm the first person in my family to actually work for a governor, let alone two. I've been blessed. And so I really want to make sure this is an opportunity. It's been an opportunity state for me, certainly. And I want to make sure it's an opportunity state for everyone, including the Northwest.
When you go to knock on doors, or you go to, we'll stick with knocking on doors. That's more personal, one-on-one.
Yeah.
What do you say? What's the first thing you say when you knock on a door, the answer? What's the first thing you say?
So I try to introduce myself. I'm Will Martin. I'm running for lieutenant governor, and I'm doing so because I've got an experience as a businessman and working for the last two Republican governors. And I want to make sure that we're actually making the state run more effectively, save you more money, retire debt, and get the state moving forward again and growing.
No, I didn't hear you say, or maybe you did and I just didn't hear it. Did you say I'm a Republican? Running?
You know what? I will tell you, I often end up just talking about me. And here's the reason why. I find so many people are just past the whole issue of what party. Some of the first people who donate to me, and I'm sure this is, again, this is not the politically correct thing to say. I've had Democrats that have known me for decades who have never voted Republican, never given to a Republican, who've donated to me. And I know that makes people a little squeamish sometimes because we get so much into these partisan battles. These are just folks who know me and they know my character and my values.
Okay. When I'm assuming after you give your first spiel, the number one has to be, the number one first question is, are you a Republican or Democrat? Or at least it's got to be at the top of the list.
It's
and if funny. So, when you do say Republican, what's the response?
So I'll tell you that I've actually is not as often as you would think. I will tell you. Now we'll talk about it, and I'll say when I'm closing, I'll talk about the fact that I'm running in the Republican on the Republican ticket, and that it's the partisan primary. I talk about the dates of the election. And by the way, July 26th is coming up. That's the early vote. So we've got the
3 days.
opportunity to vote.
Oh,
And then August 9th is the main event. So what I really try to do is to focus on who I am and what I'm bringing to the table. And so when we have to talk further about, which party, what's going on, I've gone into African American communities where people traditionally have never voted Republican, and I'm talking to folks in the Hispanic community, in the Hmong community as well. I'm trying to reach everybody in this state,
hmm.
because I think part of the reason why in a 50-50 state we lose because we don't bother to talk to people who haven't traditionally been invited to vote Republican.
Hmm.
So that's the reason why I'm a little different as well.
Yeah.
Is I want everybody the same way that Tommy Thompson used to go out and shake hands at the crack of dawn. I'm trying to do that because I believe everybody in Wisconsin has the opportunity to vote for a candidate they believe in.
Well, speaking of maybe not politically correct, uh, when you are door knocking in the African American community
Mhm.
and you say that you're a Republican, do you get some negative feedback there? Do you get a "how dare you"?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of the above. But I also get people who say they're sick of, some are sick of both parties. Some are sick of the Democrats taking folks for granted. I'll tell you, just because of the work that I've done in the community, I was invited multiple times to be on Black Talk Radio and to talk about being a Republican and to talk about the solutions that I'm trying to offer. So that's been an interesting conversation because we had to break down the walls in terms of what party and the label means and what it means for me. So that's often the case. People will sort of say, well, you have to explain Trump. Say, well, no, no, not really. I'm explaining Martin,
No,
right?
not
I'm
really.
focused on explaining Martin.
Sure,
So that's the way I've done it and talked about
sure.
my experience and my history and what I'm ready to do. And I'll say I was invited to write a weekly column in two African American newspapers because again, people are interested in hearing a different perspective.
We actually, I printed this out this morning. We published it on Thursday. You was sent a column to us, and the headline was "State Must Step Up Now to Help Families Afford Housing." It's on our website at DrydenWire.com. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, of course, but in here, so it talks about housing and some percentages. But further down it says, "I'm calling on Governor Evers and Lieutenant Governor Barnes to implement my affordable housing action plan. Explain to people what your plan is and why that needs to be implemented now."
Okay, so the why now is we're going through, obviously, as every family. Apparently, government doesn't understand this, but every family understands that it's just becoming much more expensive to do exactly what you were doing, a month, 2 months, 3 months ago. Housing is up in Milwaukee by 18%. To a rental unit in Milwaukee, the average rent has jumped from $150 to $1,125. That just means less to be able to afford, particularly if you are already stretching. But it's not just in Milwaukee. It's places like Appleton. The rents are up for a 3 bedroom, 117% year over year.
Yeesh.
In Nina, for a 2 bedroom, it's up
Yeah, I saw that
146%.
one. Where's Nina? I think I've seen like signs for that.
In Menasha, Lake Winnebago.
Okay, sure, sure.
Yeah. So again, these what we're finding is people are hurting all over this state, and in many communities, rural communities particularly, they're already at a zero rental vacancy rate because there's not enough units anyway.
Yeah,
Right,
housing.
long before this happened.
Yeah,
Um,
you even stated in here, a growing housing crisis is affecting our families, and the runaway inflation we live through deepens that crisis. Without help, too many parents, children, and seniors will become homeless. It does not have to be this way. The state government can and must do much more to help make housing affordable to our families. And then you went through kind of this bullet point thing.
Exactly. So it's more solutions again. And here's where it comes down to. We're paying for a government that includes the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority
Hmm?
and other agencies that focus on housing and economic development issues, right? By the way, housing issues are economic development because many businesses are finding they can't find enough housing to get them close enough to them, and people will quit the jobs because of the commute.
Real quick,
So,
I just want to jump in. Dave
mhm,
Armstrong, Representative Dave Armstrong in the
yeah,
75th. He is the Executive director for the Barron County Economic Development Corporation. And of course, he's in the assembly when Romaine, who's now running for Senate, but whatever. He's been on our show before. I think he even came on like with Fitzy and I for a Positive Tuesday show. It wasn't in his capacity necessarily as a person in assembly, but about that every time I talk to him, every time he's on a show, we've gotten to know him well as a family. It's always housing. Like to the point where I'm like, Dave, is there anything else we can talk about? Creepers. But it's housing. Now there's other stuff, but that's the number one thing. And he's like, I don't understand how nobody else understands. This is a huge, huge problem, and we have to get this under control.
That's right. And so Dave is somebody.
Oh, live shows, I tell you.
Freeze for a moment there.
Oh, there you go. I can hear you. Hold on, just give it a second here. Hey, can you still hear us?
Uh-oh.
Oh, there you go. You there?
Ben, can you hear me?
I can. Sounds like you can't hear us. Yeah, just sign out and sign back in.
Uh-oh.
I'm literally just going to call him. Live. Let's see. Will. Hold on, Will. Hold on. All right. Calling Will.
Hey.
Hey, yeah, we can hear you. So just sign out and then sign back in.
Okay, great.
All right, cool. Bye. How many people do we lose? Sorry about that. That happens from time to time. Oh, I didn't hear it.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it happens. It's no big deal.
Yeah. So what I just wanted to say about this, housing is so critical, and I am worried about people becoming homeless because obviously you start talking about 146% increase in the rents. Who can afford to make that kind of adjustment that quickly? So what I'm calling on, we're paying for a government that includes Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Economic Development Authority.
Mm-hmm.
Got
WIDA?
WIDA. We've got Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation also has taken on some housing projects as well. The Department of Administration Division of
Oh, good gravy.
So I just want to make sure that people understand that they're paying for a government that's. Can you still hear me, Ben?
Yep, can still hear you fine. Oh man, we're totally getting Tom Tiffany'd right now. There we go.
Hey, I have no idea. Last time we had a glitch, and so apparently you said at the beginning of the show, "Hey, everything is looking great." So
yeah,
but anyway,
and you even said, "Don't jinx it," and I totally did. Sorry about that.
So I'll make it quicker. We've got multiple agencies. They're all actually doing housing initiatives, and yet it's so focused on low-income housing. And then we have solutions, obviously, for luxury housing market rate. But that middle housing, we don't have a solution at the state government for today. So what I'm doing a couple of things. One, with this agency, we need to actually make sure that WIDA is getting out aggressively. So I'm calling on the governor and the lieutenant governor to immediately implement what I'm calling my affordable housing action plan. Having WIDA actually open up satellite offices in every region of the state in combination with local governments so that people understand what the resources are available so they don't become homeless. Two, this agency actually finances the development of new housing units. So I'm calling on them to make sure that they are reaching out to other governmental bodies. For instance, schools. There are a number of school districts that actually own 100-year-old buildings that can be retrofitted into housing. We need to make sure that we're converting as much of the for adaptive reuse, getting more housing units produced right now so that we can actually put them on the market. Three, the WIDA can actually do mortgages. We've got the 13th oldest housing stock in the nation.
I'm sorry, I don't know what that means.
So the 13th oldest housing stock means we have not been producing new housing enough. So actually, the concentration of houses that are 80 years or more, 80 years old or older, is significant in this state. In some communities like Superior, 30% or more of the housing is at least 80 years old.
Wow.
Same thing is true in Racine. So we've got a number of places where we have not built in so long that, and those houses, think about, walking into a house that was built 80, 100 years ago, smaller rooms, not built the way people live today. You,
Electrical is just terrible.
you
You
shun those kinds of
you
houses
can't turn the coffee
sometimes.
pot on and the microwave, or you're gonna blow a
There
fuse.
we go. There we go.
Yeah.
So you can do renovation mortgages. So people often don't know about the other options where instead of getting a second mortgage, okay, so why am I talking about this? One, the mortgage can actually be cheaper than the rent. Okay. In some communities, the mortgage can be cheaper than the rent. Okay, following. Places like Racine, where we have a significant number of homes that either the county is holding for back tax, or have been abandoned. Those homes can be sold and put back into productive use. And what it needs is the ability to do the renovation, right? So being able to partner with the local government that may put in some money. WIDA can actually put up the down payment assistance to a family in addition to backing the loan. And they do that through local community banks. So there's a whole way to get people and to renovate the housing and get more people living in the community. So I'm not trying to attack getting more units produced, whether they're apartments or new housing or new single family homes, trying to make sure that we talk about how we finance that and making sure that people have the information, because the most important thing is that we have so many government programs that people are paying for in Wisconsin that they have no idea exist.
One of the things you had bullet pointed here, and I'm reading this verbatim, it says, use a sum of WIDA's reserve funding, so you don't have to explain what that is, to
Yep.
finance building more affordable apartments across communities. WIDA typically uses federal and state tax credits to finance the construction of new apartment buildings. Only
Right.
using those sources is insufficient to meet the growing crisis. The $3 billion authority should reallocate reserves to start more development projects. I think that was something kind of along the lines of what you're talking about. But first, what is reserve funding? And then explain this a little bit further.
Yeah. So what's happened is they actually WIDA, generates. I would say profit, right? They don't like that word. So, but
What else would you call it?
WIDA actually, yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. So, WIDA is actually a fee-based authority. It is not run on the state budget. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So this is another thing that ends up happening is they generate using fees, and they sell essentially the tax credits that are distributed to us from the federal government. They provide them that generates income or equity for being able to develop the project. Okay, so what's happened is they're using the traditional tax credits that aren't growing. The number of tax credits we get, the amount isn't significantly growing to meet the demand. And so as a result, when they're generating fees, sometimes they could generate 20, $30 million in a year of additional revenues through those fees, through other income. I'm suggesting that they use more of those reserves above and beyond their expenses
Okay.
to reinvest now in getting more projects. And then there is, I think when we got cut off, Department of Administration, Department of Administration of Energy, Housing, and Community Relations. They do very much the same thing. And in their case, they can't build new, but they can retrofit to do adaptive reuse. So when those school buildings come up in an economically distressed area, that's a great opportunity to maybe do senior housing or to do workforce housing for folks who are working these jobs but can't afford to live closer to the work. These are different ways that we can actually finance getting more housing produced.
If anyone wants to read that entire that plan that you have, it's on DrydenWire.com. We published it on Thursday. It's still on our main page. You had ended these bullet points here that says our families and seniors need action now. It is time for leaders to step up. make state government work for our people and communities and solve real problems facing us. So it's time for leaders to step up. Need action now. The things that you have listed out, are these I know we don't, you don't particularly like it when it's a Republican Democrat, but how about I ask you it this way? Why isn't this already done? What's the reason for the, I don't want to say other side, like but whomever is not getting this done, Republican, Democrat, or just bureaucracy, whatever, why aren't we doing this already? There must be a reason.
I think this is, again, the issue about experienced leadership. So, the Evers administration came in, it was by definition inexperienced. I think that the experience level has grown substantially since they came in. So again, we're dealing with crisis after crisis, some of them created by this administration. And it's certainly not stepping up to be able to fill that gap. So this is, again, and notice that I'm not calling on what we will do next year. I'm not asking people to limp through a terrible economy and wait till we get there. I'm calling on the current administration that's getting paid to serve the people of Wisconsin to do the job right now. Now, if they won't do it, we certainly will do it when we come in. But people can't wait for months with 146% increase in rents, right?
Yeah.
And that's food, clothing, transportation that you can't afford.
All right, so what is next for you? The campaign's going well. You got, what is it? How many days are left? 17?
We've got 17.
17 days left. Have people already made up their minds? Can you just pretty much stay home for the next 2 weeks and 3 days?
No,
because
vast
now
majority
everyone's
of
already made up their mind already, so I can just sit and watch, binge Netflix or something.
Now, there are some races where that might be true, but in this race, the vast majority of people still don't know us. The traditional press has not spent time on this race. And
No.
You think about it, it's kind of weird to me that we've got a constitutional office, an officer who takes over if the governor's incapacitated or dies.
Yeah.
And, and the traditional press has had no interest in talking about
I've noticed
who
that
takes
too.
over.
I know.
It's a
I
weird
see,
thing.
obviously, the governor's race and the AG's race. That's obviously a big topic right now. But I don't really ever see much. I remember even a Marquette poll came out like a month ago. I think we had like Eric Bott come on and kind of explain some of these things from AFP. And in that poll, there wasn't even, I don't even think there was, or maybe there was lieutenant governors in there. I can't remember. But like a lot of polls, I don't even see things. I don't really see like you on. Have you done like radio radio up here isn't. I'm not trying to knock radio up here. I'm sure we have stations. I don't know of any of them, but I'm sure we do. But in terms of like political shows, kind of a radio, I think those are really in southern Wisconsin. Weber, Jay Weber, Dan O'Donnell.
So I've been a guest with Dan O'Donnell, and so I've done his show.
Oh,
Meg
nice.
Ellison has just been just so wonderful, embraced me, and so I actually drove up rather than to phone it in. I literally drove up to get a chance to meet her in studio, and so we've now done 3 interviews together, and she's been excited about the fact that we're bringing solutions as well. So, but I'll tell you, in this race, there's just so many people who don't know. And that's really what it's going to come down to, is trying to make sure that as many people in the state know that they don't have to go just the political route, and have somebody who's got the experience and is ready to roll up sleeves and do the work.
When did you officially get into the campaign?
December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day.
Was there any particular reason for that, or it just happened to be?
It just happened to be the day, although my grandfather did serve in Pearl Harbor after the bombing in
Oh, wow.
World War II. So
If you could tell, like Will Martin today, July 23rd, 2022, could tell Will Martin December 7th, 2021, one thing, what would it have been? Or what would it be? You're going to go back and you're just going to whisper in your own ear and say, hey, dude, don't do this, or do more of this, or do less of this. What would you tell 7-8 months ago, Will Martin?
keep going. Keep going. When we started, people said, well, you're not in office and you're not well known. Well, the reality is none of the people who are running, there are 8 of us, none of us are known statewide. And the reality is no one has ever run for lieutenant governor and been well known across the state. Just doesn't happen that way.
That's
So,
true. I didn't think about that.
so really it's about the ideas and it's about what you want to actually get accomplished for the people of Wisconsin. And so as long as I keep focused on that, however this race ends, will be a success.
At the very beginning, I was talking about there's some momentum being built from your campaign, and I felt like, and I think you would agree, it kind of started right after the GOP convention in May. So that was about 2 months ago. Some of the people that I talked to, the political minds people that I've talked to, kind of the behind the scenes, say that if Will Martin, if the primary election was in 2 months from now and not a little over 2 weeks from now, he'd be the front runner. Would you agree with that because it's about the momentum being picked up, or have you heard that as well? That man, it's really going well, but it's not 2 months from now; it's 2 weeks from now.
Correct.
Is that momentum going to be enough? I know it's a stupid question to ask because everyone's going to say, "Yeah, I'm going to totally win," and of course, and if I can meet everybody. But how does this end? August 9th.
You know what? The beautiful thing is, it ends with the people. I mean, that's the great thing about democracy, right? Is it ends with the people. They're going to make a decision about how this actually turns out. And you and I have talked about faith, and both being blessed. So it's going to work out just fine. What is important to me is I have brought to the table real solutions. I've tried to make sure both our gubernatorial candidates as well as our other lieutenant governor candidates. I just went to an event where almost all of us were there, lieutenant governor candidates. And I talked about the fact that if you hear candidates talk about cutting a tax or eliminating a tax, but never talking about cutting the size of state government, what they really mean is they're shifting the cost to another tax, right? Because if you're not cutting the expenses, you got to still pay for everything. I continue to say those sorts of things. So people are now picking up and saying, hey, when so-and-so says this, what's your plan for cutting the size so we don't end up having to pay this, in another way? People are now starting to adopt the plan that I've talked about: consolidate state agencies, sell off unused property, make sure that we're actually eliminating programs that we no longer need. So I keep talking about we've got to actually, families have had to tighten their belt. But state government has grown 15% or $11.5 billion since Scott Walker left office.
What?
Yes. That's
only been like 3.5 years. No.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, 3.5 years. And I'm telling you, it has grown by $11.5 billion since Scott Walker left office. Okay. 15%. So when you talk about inflation, it's also in your state government. And I will tell you that the state of Illinois, which we all think is well run, right? The state of Illinois, they spend $46 billion a year running state government, okay, for almost 13 million people. We're now spending almost the equivalent of $44 billion a year for fewer than 6 million people living here.
So about the same budget. When you said, what do you mean, the equivalent, 44? So you're saying it's about the same amount of money we spend, but it's not like prorated or anything, right? It's just ours is around
we do a biennial budget. So for that reason, I'm saying, in our annualized, if you took the annualized number, it's about $44 billion.
It's the same amount for like half the people.
Exactly. So you think about that. That's $7,400 for every man, woman, and child in the state. It's time to tighten the belt for state government. And what I want to do is actually have a true cut, not a cut in the growth. I want a true cut in state government. And that's why I'm trying to make sure we get on the ticket.
Plans. You have plans for this and plans for this and policy, and your rational, logical thinking. You're so boring. Well, come on, let's get to some juicy politics stuff. Rip on your opponents or something.
No, because, there are no opponents, right? All I'm doing is trying to make sure the people know, right? So I don't think of myself as having a bunch of opponents. I think there are peers in this race. They're offering, different things. But what I'm trying to do is to make sure that the state is back on a good, sound fiscal footing. We get this is a conservative state in the sense that we don't overspend. Until now, we've gotten just out of control, and we've got to start bringing this back down.
I'll stand by my words from the very beginning. You're an impressive man, Will. What do you have coming up this weekend? We're at our 45-minute time.
Beautiful.
You have 17 days left. What are you up to?
Okay, so I'm leaving here, talking to you on a high note, and then I'm going to go over to Milwaukee County, has their GOP picnic. So I'll be out meeting with folks there. Then we're going to go to a faith group that is meeting. They will have a few hundred people gathered as well. And so it's on and on and on. We'll keep fighting this through.
Well, I know I and our family will be praying for you. Is there a I thought I saw a lieutenant governor's debate.
There just was a televised debate done by Spectrum News 1 in conjunction with Wiz Politics and Michael Best Strategies. And that is available online. And so if people want to look up Spectrum News, they can actually find the link to the full debate.
Got it.
But that's what this is about. And I'll tell you two last things as we get out of here. One, this is not my last rodeo coming up to northwestern Wisconsin. So win or lose, I'm coming back. And two, win or lose, I'm making sure that we keep moving this ticket forward. So whoever does win, they're going to have to put up with me being on the road. Because we got to get Wisconsin. This is not about any individual winning. This is about making sure we get change for the people of Wisconsin.
Impressive.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Best wishes to you and good luck. Obviously, God will be done, but it's His plan, not ours. So good luck for on the August 9th. If people want to go and find out more information about you, where do they go?
Okay, Will, the number 4, ltgovernor.com. Will, the number 4, ltgovernor.com.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Special thank you to our guest today, Republican candidate for Wisconsin, Lieutenant Governor Will Martin, for joining us for a chat. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden. I'll see you right back here next Tuesday for our weekly Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show, where Fitzy's actually going to be off, I think, that day. So filling in for Sheriff Fitzgerald will be Burnett County Sheriff Tracy Finch and the newly, appointed, selected, hired Grantsburg Police Chief Mitch Olson. It takes 2 people to fill in for Fitzy. Later in the week, we'll be welcoming back to the show Republican candidate for Wisconsin Governor Rebecca Clayfish. So until then, thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.